Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by my good friend, Rivals.com national analyst Clint Cosgrove. Like we always say, buddy, it's the best time of the week.
Best time of the week. Let's go. Let's talk recruiting and be awesome.
Let's be awesome today. Clint, it's always awesome to see you, like I said, and we'll always have some awesome questions from our friends in the Badgers Den. We're going to start with Mama Badger. Pretty straightforward one. Who, in your opinion, Clint, is the most likely candidate amongst the Badgers' current 3 stars to get a ratings bump this fall? I have my opinion, but I'll let you go first.
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, there's a plethora of 4 stars right now, obviously. And I can't speak definitively, I don't feel, on, other people's regions. And unlike in the, past couple of years, Wisconsin's really extended their footprint. So a lot of the guys that are committed that would be candidates are outside my region. Outside my region, obviously those regional analysts would know more. They've seen them in person and everything like that. But I'd probably say, from what I've seen, the Hawaiian kid, I don't want to botch his name.
Lafaele.
I knew you would have it down. So, yeah. So I still would botch it, but I'll practice for future. So probably him, or maybe Shamir Prescott, the defensive back. Yeah. So, but in my region, Emerson Mandel for sure. I love the kid. I don't think he's, your 6'5", 6'6", outside necessarily guy, but he's a mauler inside. He comes off the ball hard, plays with bad intentions. Really fun to watch. The more I watch him, the more I like him. To me, he's a surefire 4-star candidate. I'll be disappointed probably if he isn't one, especially after I've done a deep dive and evaluation on him. And then for me, probably Thomas Heiberger. I just love his length and what he'll be able to do. And he's your classic Wisconsin linebacker. He's going to be a playmaker. He's going to be a thumper. He's going to be a Big Ten menace. So I really like him. The hard thing with him is the evaluation's limited. It's just film thus far. We have some measurables and stuff like that, but I remember when I coached, you'd offer a kid off film. And then when I got into scouting for 8 years, where I saw like everybody in person, I was like, knowing what I know now, I don't know how many players I would offer, off film, just because a lot of the time what you see on the film is a little different in person. Like some guys just look raw or heavy footed and stuff when you watch them on film. You go and see them in person and they're fluid and twitched up and everything like that. And a lot of, what I see is, I see upside when I evaluate. I look for upside. It's not who they are right now. And sometimes you can't tell that from the film. So in-person evaluation is crucial, but he's a kid that I really like. And if I saw him more, I'd feel confident, considering him for the 4-star conversation for sure.
Yeah, I would echo your Emerson Mandel thoughts there. I think he's a beast. Just a beast. Heiberger, though, like you said, he's in South Dakota. You're not going to get, no one's really going to send, especially if you're an evaluation company, you're not going to fly a guy out to South Dakota. If you're going to fly someone there, you need to fly someone where there's a lot of talent where they can see at once.
It'd be $1,000 trip in a lot of hours.
Exactly. So. The one guy outside of your region, Clint, that I am a big fan of is Ryan Corey. And out of all the offensive linemen, he's projected as a center. And I think that Ryan Corey right now, out of the 5 offensive linemen that they have committed, is the most technically refined. And maybe, I don't know about strength-wise, but he, to me, looks like he gets it. Like he really, really gets it. And he's a football player. I hate using that cliche, but he's a freaking football player.
It's not a cliche, though, because sometimes a player's best trait, they don't have an elite trait. They're a good football player. And at the end of the day, that's what matters, so...
And so I think that actually that's going to blend into the second question that we're going to talk about here today from JSAB 1987. And they want to know, on the rival side, in terms of ratings, do positional changes and roles affect how they are ultimately viewed? For example, Corey could be a 3-star tackle, but a 4-star center. Who does this apply to right now? Like right now, Mandel is listed as an offensive tackle, but he's clearly going to be a guard, and things like that. So how does that work on the rival side and just your side in general as a scout and an evaluator?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many variables because really at the end of the day, and it may sound stupid because we're evaluating as college prospects, but we're judged by the draft. And so there are positions that carry more value. There are roles that carry more value. You could be the best fullback in the nation. You're not going to be a 5-star. It doesn't matter. You could be the best fullback in the last 5 years. You're not. There's very few 5-star running backs because up until this year, not many had been drafted recently in the first round. So position can make a big difference. A guy who is maybe an average NFL prospect as a tackle, you kick them inside and all of a sudden they're a butt kicker. I mean, there's guys on the defensive line like that. If they would flip over and play center, they're an NFL player. So it definitely does matter. And you're not going to have 15 4-star centers. It's just not going to happen. There's not going to be 15 4-star or 15 centers drafted early or anything like that. So, but that being said, since that pool is more limited, if a guy's an elite talent and they're a perfect fit for the position, I would say it can help you get that 4-star, but center will also almost always prevent you from getting that 5th-star, so there's a lot of variables. Mandel would be a great example, as a guard or a center. He's a 4-star kid. So position value does matter. That is
and also there
in the rankings.
It's a different skill set too, right? Because if I'm evaluating, let's take Emerson Mandel, right? He's listed as a tackle, but he's clearly a guard. Right?
Yes.
And so in the next evaluation cycle, his position might change from offensive tackle to offensive guard. And then I would imagine you're looking at a different set of traits, even if it's just a little bit, right? It's not, you're not looking for it's not 100% match to match traits on tackle to guard. So his power that he has as a guard to hold up against a nose, a 1 technique, a 3 technique is more important at guard than his ability to be able to pass set and deal with fast edge rushers, which may not be in his, the strongest part of his skill set. So I would imagine that's sort of that balance that you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as an offensive tackle, the reason that those long, lengthy guys are so important is because you're not going to win unless it's Joe Thomas, the size and athleticism combo battle any day of the week against an advanced speed 4 pass rusher who's 230 pounds. It's just not going to happen off pure athleticism. So that's why the length and the ability to reach at guys, not reach forward, but I mean keep them at bay and get deep in a pass set, but able to redirect and use your length to inside punch and stuff like that is so important to tackle. So Mandel, he wouldn't be great on an island. A lot of pass protections, if you have an elite offensive tackle, you can anchor it. What you do is you slide all of the line except for that opposite side offensive tackle, and they're one-on-one with that pass rusher. Mandel, could he do it? Yeah. I mean, he can do it, but is he going to do it day in and day out against first-round draft pick at defensive end? I don't know. Where you put him on the inside, he's protected pass-wise. He's very athletic. And in that role, he's perfect for it. He's great laterally. He can redirect. He can use his hands, understands leverage. And then, same thing, I guess in the opposite direction, an offensive tackle that you put him at guard, sometimes they're just not twitched up, to get down on those double teams and then work to the second level. It's a different skill set. It really is. Now there's guys who can do it all. Like Skoronsky at Northwestern. That guy's an offensive guard by definition, right? But he's so athletic, and this is one of those rare instances where you talk about not needing that physical advantage to be able to go one-on-one with an elite pass rusher. So a lot of variables again. Very subjective, but at the same time, the skill sets are different and players have more upside, even at the same position at a different place at the position. A slot guy might not be a elite, on the ball X receiver who you're going to put backside on a 3-by-1, but he might be just a slot machine when you get them matched up on, a nickel defender, or get, teams in sub packages, and can run, directional routes, and then, skills after the catch. Whereas that outside guy, can he go deep? Can he run a deep comeback? Can he win a 50-50 ball? Can he get off the press? Yeah, you don't have to worry about that as much in the slot. So you're going to get more man coverage if you're backside, to a 3-by-1. So within the same position, there are so many different things. Like Kyan Berry, if he was only playing on the outside, he wouldn't be a 4-star. But because of where he plays and his versatility and ability within the offense that he will be playing in, combined with ball skills and everything like that, he will be a guy that is a 4-star caliber, and he is a 4-star now.
Do you think, speaking of receivers, that actually makes me think of something. Do you think that there will be a day, like right now, Rivals has, like tailback versus all-purpose back, right? You have, pro style versus dual threat quarterbacks. Do you see a day where Rivals, especially for receivers, will go X and slot, or, outside receivers versus slot receivers, with just the proliferance of how many guys are operating purely out of the slot these days?
Yeah, we've had those conversations for sure. My personal opinion on the receiver aspect is I don't want to do it. I want a receiver to be a receiver to be a receiver. And then we know, based off of what they do, their skill set applies to a certain area of a pass game that they can be a lead in, because a guy who's a slot at one school might be an outside guy at another school. Sure. Who's recruiting something different at slot. And so, not every slot's going to be 6'2", 220 pounds, or 6'5". There's slots that are smaller, but they're great off the press. They're great at the one-on-one battles. They're more straight line guys and maybe not underneath guys. So I really think that's in the eye of the beholder. With the offensive line, I would rather go tackle an interior instead of
that makes a lot more
tackle
sense.
Guard and center. And then the other one that you talked about, why am I going blank?
Oh, I just talked about receiver versus outside receiver, inside receiver.
Oh,
but
you talk about quarterbacks too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I would like to get rid of the dual threat and the pro style. I think a lot of us would, just because offense will determine that a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. There are guys who do not run period in high school, but are athletic and get labeled dual threat quarterbacks. So there's so much gray area within it, I think. And so,
like if you go back a couple of years, like you think of someone like a Trevor Lawrence, he was labeled as like a pro style quarterback, but then you actually watch him run, and he's faster and more actually agile than a lot of the dual threat quarterbacks from the same class, right? And you see him outrunning defensive backs with his blonde locks flowing behind him in those 6'5"
beautiful
strides,
flowing
right?
locks. Yeah.
And so I think that's really interesting. I think the all-purpose back versus the running back is another one that could probably, I think that's an interesting one to talk about as well.
It could, but I like it. And here's a great example that would apply to the Badger recruiting class. If Darian Dupree is expected to pound it between the tackles and run power all day, every day, is he going to be rated as high as he is?
Not. No, he's like a 5'6" maybe then, if he's doing that instead of a 5'9".
Yeah. And so these guys are really these all-purpose backs. There's guys who fall in between, so there is some gray area there, but the true all-purpose backs, and that's why Darian, we had him rated really high when he was younger, and then he didn't grow as much as I had hoped, and he was listed as a straight running back. Then he did grow and got switched to an all-purpose back, and it was just the perfect storm. But those guys are Swiss Army knives, like an Austin Eckler in the NFL. If he was supposed to be Derrick Henry, it just wouldn't work, So I do think there is some way to distinguish there, although there is some gray area, but I think there's a place for it. The hard part is everything goes off historical. Okay. So we've had pro style and dual threat quarterbacks for all this time. So if we want to change it, how are we treating the historical rankings and where people fall and everything like that? So that is the hard part. You don't want to mess, because Rivals has been doing this for a long time and they've been doing it well for a long time. And a lot of the metrics are based off of rivals because they were the first and the best. And, we just, you don't want to mess with that necessarily. You got to find the right way to do it. So it's really a delicate thing. Would we like to do it? Yeah, I think we'll find a way eventually. That's over my pay grade and for people smarter than me. But yeah, that's really the flaw in it right now.
I think I would imagine the hardest differentiator would be the way that the edge rusher position has changed, because there's outside linebacker, strong side defensive end, weak side defensive
Would
end,
love to
right?
have edge.
And because if you look at, especially with Wisconsin running a 3-4 like they have for the past decade, right? Some of these guys who may be listed as a defensive end are coming in outside linebacker because they're expected to be a rush linebacker, or they're listed as like an outside linebacker, but not a traditional
They're
like
a weak
4-3 weak side drop, right?
Yep.
They are, Nick Herbig comes to mind, right? Outside linebacker, but he's getting after the passer. Like his job is to get in the backfield. You look at some like a Daryl Peterson from the current class, same kind of thing, right? But some of these guys are also listed as defensive ends, and the strong side versus weak side defensive end is a whole nother can of worms as well. I would imagine that is even more scheme dependent than some of this running.
Yeah, because a lot of those guys are 3 techniques, unless you're, an under defense, which is similar to the 3-4 in terms of alignments, just different personnel, strong side defensive end is going to be that, 5 technique type. And, so yeah, it is scheme dependent. But the edge versus outside linebacker is another discussion we've had. It's just, you'll see me in my articles. I often say edge when they're listed as a weak side defensive end or an outside linebacker, because maybe they play the position in high school, and if they went to another school, they would play linebacker, versus at another school, they're going to play defensive end and just rush the passer. And so, but I think there is a little less gray area in the sense that an edge has similar responsibilities versus a true defensive end and a true outside linebacker.
I would agree. Yeah, because you think of that outside linebacker / like weak side defensive end is sort of where we would pigeonhole what we currently call an edge. And so I think that there is, there's something there. Obviously, I'm surprised that Rivals is still listing fullbacks. Sorry, Bernie, but I don't even know how many fullbacks.
I don't think we really do. It's never on the ranking sheet.
It's never on the ranking sheet. The last year that we have, let's see, 2000, the class of 2023 has 15 linebacker or 15. Oh no, they're all purpose backs. I apologize. Nope, there are no fullbacks listed for in the
they kind of are in like no man's land. They'll be H back, which is tight end, and then which is another crazy thing, because like if you're not a traditional tight end, like some of these guys, if they're more the H back type, but they can play on the ball and they can play off the ball, they can split out. And I'm not talking about your 6'6", 220-pound guys who are going to develop into 260-pound tight ends. I'm talking about the kids who are 6'2.5", 245 pounds right now, but are playing, fullback and H. They get grouped in with the tight ends, and then they're, when you have them with, you think tight end is like that flex and Y on the ball type. They're not going to really line up to those guys, and they're not going to be rated as high as them. So there's so many variables. That's what makes this so much fun. And it's incredible to study just how it's evolved, and the importance of certain positions and what is valued. And that's part of the reason I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about this for days, but we've got other questions from the den to get to. Shootsman, always one of our top question askers. Feels like right now Notre Dame has been one of the biggest rivals on the recruiting trail of late. I think you could also put Penn State in there as well. But now, obviously, every kid is different. We understand that. But it feels like right now Notre Dame really has a built-in advantage, especially with the Catholic school kids. Like, I think that's a historic thing. But is that something that we'll continue to see? Do you think that, I guess, where does Wisconsin and Notre Dame differentiate themselves from each other? Because in a lot of ways, they have similar profiles. excellent academic institutions, long history of producing, especially outstanding offensive linemen and tight ends. Sort of how do you see those two schools sort of separating themselves?
Well, I mean, historically, I do think, yeah, Catholic League players, Notre Dame did have the advantage. That was a big selling point. As things have gone on, I don't think it's as big anymore. There was a big funnel from Catholic League straight to Notre Dame, Chicago Catholic League to Notre Dame for a long time. That's just not always the case anymore. Back in the old school days, like my dad went to Mount Carmel, my grandpa went to Mount Carmel, Irish Catholic, like going to Notre Dame, like that was a big thing, still at Fenwick. It's a big thing. They're very well connected to the Notre Dame program. But I think over the years, that really hasn't become as important. It's Notre Dame as the private institution. It can be a big draw for people who are very serious with their Catholic faith, obviously. It's the tradition of the football program. It's the academics, the campus, and everything like that. The way Wisconsin and them are really different. Maybe the same type of players they're producing, because for a long time Notre Dame played almost that Big East, Big Ten type schedule. So there's some crossover there, but Wisconsin is so different in a way that it's a huge public university on a big campus, whereas Notre Dame is a smaller private institution on a small campus. And for a football player, it comes down to fit, I think. There's no denying the magic that you feel when you're in that Notre Dame facility and you walk on that field. For me, it resonates. I grew up watching Rudy in the movie theaters. So there was some like magic to that. And you still feel it. You can feel it when you're there. Wisconsin has a different feel. It's more of like a party energy, big school, wild crowd, and everything like that. Now Notre Dame Stadium can get loud too. Camp Randall is loud as well. Really, there are similarities. I think it comes down to fit. At Notre Dame, it's more of that old school, kind of like you go in their locker room still, and there's like wooden stuff in there. It's incredible. You go into Wisconsin's and everything's kind of new age. So it's kind of, what's important to the kid, what's important to the family, and what community they kind of want them developing in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one battle obviously is going to be interesting to keep an eye on as we move forward for the 2025 class is going to be Owen Strebig, the big time offensive lineman, again from Catholic Memorial in Waukesha. Wisconsin and Notre Dame are the two teams that really seem to be in it right now, with a handful of others. But our colleague John McNamara thinks Notre Dame's got the upper hand right now. He put in a future cast for Owen over.
Wow.
For Notre Dame, so that's going to be really interesting because Strebig is a. I mean, he's a top 100 type player. I don't exactly remember where he is in the 2025
He's pretty high
class,
now,
but he's pretty far up there if I recall correctly. Yeah, he's the 10th rated offensive tackle in the country in 2025 per Rivals, 77th nationally. So, I mean, obviously he's someone who's going to be very hotly contested, but he is probably the 2025 prospect, at least that I'm most interested right now in following for the Badgers. But let's stick with 2024 here for a second. C-Man1 wants to know, they were wondering how coaching staffs keep commitments. How do they keep everyone in the fold? It's very rare. The Badgers have pretty much filled out this class, maybe 2, 3 at most more guys. But we're sitting here on Thursday, July 20th, and the class has been wrapped up for a week, effectively, since Lafayette committed. And so what is it? Is it letters? Is it texts? Is it phone calls? Like, what does a coaching staff do to keep their guys committed and not peeking around and doing sort of other stuff and really keep them, eyes on the prize for the Badgers?
You do exactly what you did to get them committed in the first place. You never stop recruiting them. If you stop courting someone, somebody else is going to be courting them. And that's going to look a lot more appealing than the person they committed to that doesn't seem as interested in them anymore. So you don't rest on your laurels once you get a commit. At least when I was recruiting, the kids I had in the boat, I'm gonna recruit them harder. I'm gonna develop that relationship so it's unbreakable. So, if they get a bigger, better offer that maybe has a similar academic profile and everything, that it doesn't matter to them. And that's what you have to do. You never stop recruiting kids, because if you are, or if you aren't recruiting them, somebody else is. And guys notice that. It's like, oh, they love me up a lot until I was committed, and then all of a sudden, I hear from coach, text every now and then. At that point, the letters and all that stuff don't really matter. I think it's that personal communication, almost like a mentorship, friendship, father son type thing, where if they're having trouble with math and they need somebody to talk to, they can reach out to you, and you remember that, and you bring it up and you check in on it. It's all relationships, because at the end of the day, if a player committed to you, and this doesn't apply for every school, it's not like if you committed to some random FCS school and Alabama offers you, it doesn't matter what that relationship is, right? It doesn't matter at all. Alabama's undefeated in that circumstance. But if it's Wisconsin, Alabama, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Illinois,
any Big
Michigan,
10, you name the Big Ten program, yeah.
Yeah, if that relationship is established, that is going to be almost undefeated every single time. Think about the closest people in your life. It's not what they offer you when you go over to their house. It is about that connection that you have, and that loyalty, that love for that person. And for me, that's what recruiting is all about. That's why I love recruiting. It's about relationships. And you're at a place like Wisconsin. Yeah, you have a lot to offer. You have an edge up over some other people. But that doesn't mean you are undefeated just because your school is better at football, or your academics are better than another school's. The relationships do matter. And I kids should not commit to a coach necessarily. But at the end of the day, in the recruiting process, the guy who can I rely on when things go bad? Like, yeah, your parents, but who's that outside person that you reach out to? If you are the recruiting coach and that outside person they reach out to is you, chances are you're going to keep that kid. And that's what recruiting is all about in my mind.
Well, Clint, when things go bad in my life, I reach out to you. You're
and I
my
reach out to you,
guy.
Man.
There we go. I absolutely love it. And that's where we're going to wrap it up here today on Badger Blitz TV. Clint, it's great to see you, outside of the home right now, out in the Pacific Northwest, living your best life.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, you know what? For these 30 minutes, you are. For
these 30
minutes, every week,
we're both living
our best life. Clint, thank you as always. He's Clint Cosgrove at @rivals_Clint. I'm Matt Perkins at @Perko_. Check out the latest episode of Believe in Badgers with your former teammate, Dwayne Smith, who was recruited, who was another one of those Chicago. He was one of those.
My dad recruited him.
Yes, he did. Hales Franciscan.
Hales Franciscan, yep. No longer there. It's a different school now, but yeah.
But he, he shouted out your pops in the episode as his recruiter.
I'll tell my pops. He'll love it.
He's got some stories. He's got some great stories about getting hypnotized at camp. Just a fantastic interview. Highly recommend checking out that over on Believe in Badgers. Make sure you're subscribed here to Badger Blitz, Badger Blitz TV, in the den all the time with us, with John McNamara. We got a big old staff over there now. Hired another new writer joining the squad. So
Den's
it's exciting
the hot spot.
It's the spot. It's the spot for all of your Wisconsin athletics information needs. So until next time, Clint, I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in the den.